Backstage with Mothership on Solid Rock Radio begins now. Hear the best in new music, artist interviews, stories from the road, and more. You are now backstage, and here's your host, Mothership.
Hey everybody. Autumn's project called Autumn Eve has pulled from her own life experience to heal not only her own broken places, but those of her fans. Let's listen.
We've met before, but I don't know a lot about you personally.
Yes, I think I met you for the first time at Kingdom Come Festival last year. You had your famous banana pudding, and I was like, there she is. I was like, there's Cindy. I've heard so many good things about her. So
it was great to meet you.
Yes, you too. And then we jammed out to Disciple together on the side stage. That was fun.
Always, right?
Yes.
I want to start with your story. I think that's a good place. Tell me about Autumn.
Yeah, a little bit about me. I was born in Atlanta, Georgia, and then I was raised in St. Louis, Missouri, and Texas. So I'm kind of from all over the U.S., and I have moved so many times, more times than I can count.
Was your dad in the military?
My dad was military, but he was not active. He would just move us across the country randomly.
Oh, okay.
So I love to travel, and I have a giant family. I have 6 brothers and 1 sister, and I currently live in Dallas with my 2 cats. You might hear them in the background because they love to climb all over me. And some random fun facts. My favorite color is lime green. I love Mexican food. I could eat it every day. It's kind of dangerous. And I am a queso connoisseur. And I go to places because I travel all over the U.S. And I'm like, okay, I want to have the best queso on the menu. Let me try it. And so far, the best one is in Midlothian, Texas.
Okay. That's oddly specific.
Yes.
All right. Anything else we need to know?
I'm a very sensitive person, so I actually don't watch a lot of movies. There's probably 1,000 or 2 movies I have not seen. So
So are you afraid they're going to make you cry?
No, I'm such a feeler that I can feel the movies, and it's so intense that I usually just watch comedies.
You're an empath.
Yes, 100,000 times.
Wow. That's like a blessing and a curse, isn't it?
It's a lot. It's a lot. Yes. I have been watching the Andy Griffith Show, and that has been quite wonderful because it's just lighthearted and it's old school, and man, I really miss old school American values. So it's been fun to watch that one recently.
That's classic.
On a personal note, just on being an empath and just a really big feeler, that's a really big part of why I love heavy metal and hard rock, because it's a really beautiful outlet to get my emotions out. And I'm sure everyone listening can probably attest to that for themselves too. But it's just a wonderful place to say the things that you never really got to say, especially if you had a really rough childhood or you're just going through something super difficult. Rock music is probably one of the most peaceful experiences in music that I can have, because I get to say my boundary and say my piece and let it all out, and it's so affirming. That's probably one of the biggest reasons why I love rock music, aside from the sound.
That makes a lot of sense. What does a normal day look like for you?
So naturally, I have not been a morning person for most of my life, but I've been really dedicated to my business that I just started with my guitarist, Ben. So we just started a transportation company. And so that's very new for me, and it requires me to get up pretty early, which is really good because I am experiencing that morning lifestyle for the first time. So I get up pretty early now, and I just made my coffee tonight for tomorrow morning, so it's ready to go. And I start my day probably around 6 a.m. I go drive, I take care of some administrative things for the company, and then do a lot of cleaning because these cats, oh my goodness, they run around my apartment and they make messes everywhere. So I gotta pick up after them, pick up after me. And then I really value prayer. So prayer is a big part of my day, even if it's only 5 minutes, if it's 30 minutes. Regardless, I just really enjoy spending time with God in the secret place and just drawing near to his presence. Because, oh my goodness, I could not do it without Jesus. I don't even want to think about it. And yeah, I just take care of a lot of things on social media and do some editing. And I'm always thinking big. So I spend a lot of time planning and planning the next music video and planning the next song and booking stuff for the band, and especially as we travel. So yeah, lots of admin stuff right now.
Congratulations on your new business. Whose idea was that?
Well, it's such an interesting story. So whenever I was 16, my very first job was at a driving school, and it was just a very random thing, so I thought. I just realized it this week. So I did a lot of admin stuff for the driving school as a teenager. And then 1 year ago, so fast forward way, way, way later in my life, 1 year ago, I was at a hotel because my AC went out at my apartment, and I had to bring my cats with me. It was just this whole ordeal because in Texas, you do not want your AC to go out, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
It is pretty dangerous. So I was at this hotel. I woke up the next morning and I really felt like God told me, I'm calling you to a life on the road. And I said, okay, that sounds good to me. Yeah, I travel for music. Okay, sure. But I had no idea what he actually meant. The impression I got from him saying, I'm calling you to a life on the road was RV life. So I started researching van life and, you know, portable dryers and portable washing machines and how to run AC in your car without your car being on and how to go off grid in your RV. And it was really exciting. And I thought, maybe I'll get a tour van, a tour bus for the guys and I whenever we hit the road. So it was so interesting because I lost my job this year, back in March or April, and that was really tough for me. So I was just going through so much this year. I was sick 4 times. I lost my job, and then God told me, I don't want you to work. And I was like, what are you saying? What are you doing? And I was just kicking and screaming because this year has been harder for me than 2020 was. So I've just been like, okay, God, you've called me to do music. And if it's God's will, it is God's bill. So that is just my mantra. And he said, you're going to do Uber, you're going to do Lyft. And I said, well, I don't even have an eligible car for passenger transport. So it was this whole thing where every time I would pray, I say, God, do you want me to go get a management job? Do you want me to go do this other job that I won't enjoy? But I mean, I can be a waitress. I can pay the bills. There's some really lucrative places in Dallas, some pretty high end places. And he would just say no, or I just would not have the peace. So I was just scrambling. And he reminded me, he was saying, hey, remember Uber, remember Lyft? I'm going to create a company for you, and that's going to be your inheritance. I said, whoa, like, what are you talking about? So what's interesting is my guitarist, Ben, he actually started a transportation company in 2019, and it took off, and he was very successful. But then 2020 happened, right? A bunch of other things. So God placed me in this band and gave me this incredible guitarist who has so much knowledge and resources. I just respect the heck out of Ben. Oh my gosh. So I've been partnering with him, and he's been showing me the ropes of how to start this company, and it's just incredible how we're starting just recently. So yeah, I have a transportation company now that I'm building, and I have some other dreams that it's going to fund.
Cool. What a great opportunity in several ways.
Yes, we've already had a lot of really great moments with passengers when we just kind of have this impression of God's presence to share something encouraging with them in the car, or just say, hey, does this mean anything to you? And then they're just like, wow, you have no idea what I'm going through. One of the passengers just recently for me, when I was driving, he was getting away from his abusive fiance. He packed his bag, and I took him to a hotel, and I got to encourage him and share bits of my story from my pretty intense past relationally. And I got to connect him to a trauma coach for some resources. And it was just incredible to get to talk to him about music as well, because all of that kind of ties into my song, Make You Mad.
You hinted at something that happened in your past that was very intense. Would you share a little of that story?
Sure, yeah. So, in my home, we were super religious. We didn't really know the love of God. So, I experienced over 20 years of domestic violence and religious abuse.
Mm.
So, talk about a lifetime of darkness and just cold, dark experiences. My dad was a pretty violent person, and you're just
Mm.
always walking on eggshells in the home. So, whenever Bible verses are used against you, you live in fear, you live underneath control, and even though all of that happened, I could still have these amazing moments with the love of God, with Jesus, and he would still show up, and I would be like, wait, okay, now I'm conflicted. Now I'm confused because I'm reading the Bible and it feels like nails on a chalkboard of like all the things I'm
Mm.
doing wrong,
Yeah.
because that's the lens that it was put on me. But then at the same time, though, if we had these random guest worship leaders, oh my goodness, I would just be at the right place at the right time. God's presence would show up like a fog in a room, and you could just do nothing but weep in the presence of his peace and his joy in you and his delight in you. And you're like, what is this? So, yeah, 20 years plus of this darkness. And recently I was married, and I kind of jumped in. I had so much faith that I'd know how to love this person and they'd know how to love me. And there was a lot of pretty big signs that it was going to be great. So I jumped into a marriage, and pretty soon after that, it just went really downhill. And I
Mm.
experienced abuse there too. So it was really dark, and I had to get out of that. And I was like, what is going on? So
Mm.
so yeah, I am officially divorced and so grateful to be getting my life back and getting my mental health back. Because if someone is constantly not trusting you and accusing you every single day, I mean, like, you can't live in that environment. And I
Mm.
was really wilting. I was really going downhill mentally, and it was just getting hard to function every day. I'd spend so many hours just in bed saying like, is it going to get better? Like, is it always going to be like this? So when I started to research abuse and kind of start studying different books, this one book was extremely insightful, life changing, from an author who's a counselor. She has been a counselor for over 25 years. Her name is Leslie Vernick, and she wrote The Emotionally Destructive Marriage. That really opened my eyes to help me understand, like, okay, the way that my spouse was treating me is not my fault. Like, no one ever deserves abuse. Abuse
Exactly.
is never your fault. And we cannot love this person so much that they'll change and start treating you fairly and
Right.
respectfully. There's no amount of the love of God that I can be to change another person. And I think the church really confused me in a lot of ways with my background. Like, sharing the sufferings of Christ, I took that into a meaning that just wasn't true, of like,
Mhm.
I need to be the scapegoat or the emotional punching bag, which is never what the scripture meant in the first place. So there's so much untwisting that I'm experiencing even still, but a lot of it is to books like Leslie Vernick book, The Boundaries book by Henry Cloud and Townsend. That book has really changed my life and helped me to understand the Bible, understand the world around me, how it works. Forgot to mention, I was also homeschooled, so talk about a very specific kind of
Oh, wow.
upbringing. So yeah, just religious homeschool cult vibes. They were very strong with this one. So
Mm.
we're breaking free. We're still reclaiming our life. But I just want to say, like, Jesus is love. Like, God is love, period.
Mhm.
And God's love was never meant to be confusing.
Mhm.
And the more that I get to know the Father, the more that I get to know who I really am.
You really perked up when you talked about how music touched you. Was that the thing that drew you to music, the fact that it was very healing as you would listen to it?
I would say yes in many ways. As a kid, I would just sing constantly all the time.
Mhm.
I would just be improvising and coming up with rhymes and songs constantly. There was a specific memory that I share very often. When I was about 5 or 6, I heard the radio playing in my brother's room, but we didn't listen to the radio in my house, and we didn't watch a lot of movies unless they were like only rated G.
Mhm.
So
Right.
um, So I went into the room because I said, like, what kind of song is this? I remember hearing Creed on the radio for the first time, and it was like my world just stood still. And I was like, this song is so beautiful. And, he was singing the Hold Me Now, I'm 6 feet from the edge song. And it was like everything I needed to hear as a little kid, because in my family, we didn't really talk about grief or emotions, and emotions, you couldn't share them. You couldn't show them. It wasn't really allowed. You'd be punished for showing emotions in my house. So the fact that I could hear Scott Stapp just like be so free and like share his grief on the radio, I was like, wow, this is touching my heart right now. So my mom walks in the room. She looks at me. She goes, oh no, ma'am, you turn that radio off right now. We do not listen to that in this house. I was like, just you wait, Mom. 25 more years, I'm going to be a rock star, a rebel.
Did you learn to play an instrument, and if so, when?
So when I was about 12 years old, I got a guitar for Christmas, but this guitar was from Walmart. I thought to myself, I don't want to play this guitar. It's not a real guitar, but I let it sit for a while. I thought it was kind of cool that I had one, but I didn't want to tell anyone, yeah, like I got this guitar from Walmart. So it was a little acoustic. And so it stared at me for about 4 years until in youth group when I was 16, my worship leader, who really impacted my life, he was like kind of like a father to me for a while. He's like, hey, I can tell that you sing and you're on the team next week. And he just walked away. It was so funny. We didn't talk about anything. I was pretty new to the youth group. So at that point in time, I thought, well, you know what? I think I want to try guitar again. So I picked it up and started Googling chord structures. And I started learning all the cowboy chords, the basic ones, C, G, D. And that was really empowering for me. And I remember feeling so excited that I could actually play songs and sing, and then I could play an improv. I sat down at a keyboard that we had, and I didn't know piano at all, but I was able to kind of play and like kind of teach my ear what sounds good together and start creating, even though I have never had a formal piano lesson. So even to this day, I can kind of like pick at the keyboard. I don't say that I play the keyboard, but it does help me a lot in writing.
When was it that you said to yourself, you know what I need's a band?
Such a fun story. When I was about 8 years old, I was playing outside one summer with my cousins, and they had a really nice, fun backyard and a big old garage. And in the garage, there was a drum kit, and there was baseball bats, and there was guitars, because they were the kind of family that if they wanted to do something, they would just go buy it, and then they would have the hobby and they had the gear. And so I said to my cousins that night when I was about 8 years old, hey guys, we need to start a band. And I was so serious and I was so determined. But I remember that moment. I remember where I was standing and the seriousness in my heart of like, I need to start a band with y'all.
Right.
You can probably learn how to play the drums in 5 minutes. Here, you got a guitar. You probably know how to play. I can be the singer. I just think that dream was so funny that it was in my heart that young.
Yeah.
But I had my first band, Soul Meet Spirit, when I was around the age of 21. I was in a college ministry, and it really came together, and we got to play some shows, and really enjoyed that experience of getting to work with a guitarist who was much better than me, which is Clark Hamilton. So shout out to Clark. And so that was my first band. And then I decided to go solo for a while after that, because I realized that the calling on my life was just so much different than the direction of the band, just the way that we were going. And I said, I just don't want to put that pressure on anybody if they got kids and a family like some of them had. So went solo for quite a while until a year ago. And I was teaching a voice lesson to Ben, my guitarist. After a while of working with me, he's like, Autumn, you need a band. I said, no, that's okay. Like, I'm good on my own. And I get to go faster by myself in this direction. And he was like, no, you actually need a band. And then he literally just put it together with the Lord. And then everything fell into place so beautifully. And I treasure my band right now because it just works. It's strange. It's awesome because some of the guys don't even live in my city. They live in the East Coast while I'm in Texas. So we have so much fun. And when it's the Lord, it's good. When it's from him, it just works. So they're my performing band. They help me write a little bit more and more all the time. But yeah, I've had some of my favorite memories of my whole life with them.
That's amazing.
So fast forward, you started Autumn Eve. What was the first song that you wrote?
My first song was Courageous. Yeah, Courageous is really interesting because I had just an online friend send me an instrumental. He was like, "Hey, what do you think? Do you want to sing to this?" And I said, "Oh, I really like this song. Like, you don't even know how much I like this song." So he let me write all the lyrics to it. And then I didn't hear from him for a really long time. So months go by, and I'm like, "Yeah, I really want to release this."
Mhm.
So I finally get a hold of him. He's like, "Yeah, you can have it. Cool. Like, release it. You're fine. Take it." I was like,
Wow.
"Okay. Okay." So then I got to release it. And what's really interesting about Courageous is I wrote the lyrics while I was single. I recorded the vocals when I was married, and I released it when I was divorced. Yeah,
Interesting.
very interesting.
Did it change in
Not
any way during
poignant.
that time period because of that?
Not at all. The only thing that I really felt in my heart about the song that whole period of time is I felt like God was saying, I have to put courage in you before you can sing about it or release this.
Wow. Wow.
So as you were writing it, you're ministering to yourself.
Absolutely. I say if I can listen to a song in my lowest place that I write, and if it can encourage me, then it passes the test. It's all factory, good to go. I can release.
The lyrics are really good, and there was something that stood out.
Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm screaming out, but there's no noise. I wonder if you see me, and then on the other side, I see you reaching. Wow.
Yeah, thank you. Courageous specifically is about my personal battle with PTSD. So,
Mm.
PTSD is really interesting because it's not always super loud. You can wake up in the middle of the night and you can be in a trigger, and it feels like you can't scream, but you need to
Mhm.
scream.
Mhm.
You need to let out that energy, but you feel kind of trapped or paralyzed. I know it's kind of like fight or flight or freeze or fawn. So for me, it's a lot of fawn. Fawning is whenever you play dead, and it's not anything intentional at all. It's just your body kind of being limp, and you're just kind of stuck, and you're just trying to like
Mhm.
come back to the surface and come back online and connect with people, but you don't have a lot of energy, and it just feels like you're inside the middle of the storm, and it's really quiet inside that cyclone that I wrote about. So
Mhm.
I know a lot of people have different manifestations of that. But yeah, it's really kind of like this picture of you are going through PTSD triggers. It's not your choice, it's just your body. And then like all of a sudden there's Jesus. There he is. He's like, I'm here. I'm right
Yes.
here. And that's everything to me.
Your second song came out, and now it makes sense. Blood, Sweat, and Tears, which is about an abusive relationship.
So Courageous is about PTSD, and it's about, being in your darkest place and
Mhm.
understanding that like in your lowest place, God is your strength and he gives you that courage to stand up. But then Blood, Sweat, and Tears is about being in the abusive relationship, but you start to get ideas of hope. You get to you start asking the right questions, and you start thinking, you know what, maybe there is a better way for me. And maybe I don't have to heal your insecurities. So you start thinking, and then you start to get mad, and you're like, wait, no, like, I'm not going to let you keep treating me like this. The next song, Make You Mad, is really about empowerment and setting yourself free from all of that.
More opportunity for healing?
Yes, because for over 20 years, I wasn't really allowed to be angry at my parents. I
Mhm.
was kind of forced to be polite. So that's where a lot of the fawning comes in of the PTSD, because I wasn't allowed to talk back. Or I've never had a screaming match at my parents because I wasn't allowed to. It's kind of like there's all that pressure that's built up, but then it gets to come out in the rock music appropriately and safely and beautifully so that your pain becomes art. But yeah, I would say that every time that I write a song, especially just the lyrics, it's kind of like I get to have a voice for the first time. And I
Yeah.
know it goes so much farther than just me. And as everybody's listening to my music and playing it, they get to have a voice maybe for the first time too.
Your newest song, Make You Mad just came out July 26th. What can you tell us about it?
I've never loved a song more than I love Make You Mad. Yeah, it's really interesting because as I've been studying boundaries, it really has empowered me to write songs like that. Because when you enforce a healthy boundary, healthy people don't get mad at you. But when you stop allowing a narcissist to control you, they throw a tantrum and they attack you. And so if anyone's experienced this, that song is for you to take your life back, and you do not have to apologize if somebody is twisting your arm.
Amen. It's like you're ministering to yourself, but you're also ministering to other people through your own experiences, it sounds like, with your songs.
Yes, exactly. I can never write a song about something that I haven't gone through.
Mm-hmm.
I listened to all three of your songs back to back before we got on the call because I wanted to get a feel for them all together.
I hear or feel Icon for Hire, Red, Skillet, maybe a little Demon Hunter, and maybe a little Lacey Sturm.
I appreciate that. Some of the great.
Maybe a little influence from some of those.
Definitely. In Texas for probably over 10 years, I listened to 89.7 Power FM whenever I would drive to work or drive to school. And that was our Christian rock station that we had for so long. And that's how I was able to really receive from these Christian rock bands. And they impacted my teen years so much because specifically Flyleaf was the album that it allowed me to grieve for the first time.
Wow.
You know, like I didn't listen to a lot of rock and roll growing up. Listened to a lot of pop, which kind of helped me learn how to write a song or write something catchy. So God used that for good. But in my teen years, as I listened to Flyleaf, I was like, I've never been more impacted by an artist or by the melodies or the anointing that's in the music to help me overcome the sorrow and get the sorrow out of my body. But then when I listened to Red, oh my goodness, I saw them for the first time on accident. I was at Six Flags for my first concert. It was Pillar. It was Red. Oh my gosh, Family Force 5. I will never forget that stinking show ever. Fire for the Skillet set, and there's people on these platforms that would spin upwards while they're playing cello and violin, and I was like, this is heaven.
Oh, that is amazing.
Anything else coming up?
You know, I've always wanted to do music videos, and anytime that I'm on set for one, I just feel like I'm right at home, like I'm right where I'm supposed to be, filming or helping. It's one of my favorite places to be. So my two favorite places in the world are when I'm recording music, like I'm in the vocal booth, or I'm on set for a music video. So we're getting excited to film in a few weeks another music video, and it's going to be very different this time. We're approaching it from an entirely different place than the first one, and I'm not going to share much about it other than I'm very excited to share with you when it's done.
So we have 3 songs finished. Is this going to culminate in an album or an EP? What's the timeline on this?
And I wish I knew the timeline myself. That's a really big part of why we started the transportation company. And we're devoting so much time throughout the day to work on the business is so that it can actually fund the music. Music is expensive and albums cost at least $10,000. So if you come from a pretty wild past, wild background, sometimes you're just trying to survive and not necessarily become the richest person in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes when you go through divorce or domestic violence, it kind of wipes out your finances, if you know what I'm saying. I know I'm talking to somebody because that somebody is me. So right now I'm really focused on just believing God for the finances, but also working hard for them and finding creative solutions and being very positive about it and saying, okay, God, like you're going to provide for me, but I'm also going to go do the hard work. And I just know it's the right time to launch this business. So that's going to fund the album.
Mm-hmm.
So hopefully I'll have the album done in 1 year. That would be amazing. That would be so exciting. I'm going to Nashville in about 2 weeks to record the 4th song with Andrew Stanton of Disciple. He's my producer. So
Awesome.
excited to go work on number 4.
Well, you're in good hands.
I know.
Do we have a title for this album?
We do.
Okay.
Yeah, I have no problem sharing that with you. So the album is called Rival Dreams.
Okay.
And has everything to do with you've gone through the darkness but you still choose to be the light. Because it's so easy for us to allow the poison of the darkness to come into our heart when we've been hurt, when we've been kicked down, when we've experienced so much evil in this life that it wasn't fair, it wasn't just. But when you choose, after going through that experience, to become the light, to stay in the light, and to turn towards the light of Christ, that makes you a rival dreamer. You're producing rival dreams in the earth, like a rebel with a cause.
Amen. It's been great talking to you, and I sure hope we'll get to see you soon.
Yes, I'm so glad we got to do this. Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for more great music, and check out my blog page on the Solid Rock Radio website for my guests' social media links. If you've missed any of my past interviews, you can find them uploaded to podcast.solidrockradio.org. Have a wonderful week, and let's be kind to one another.